Welcome, lords and ladies, back to the realm. I am the Goat King, and today we're exploring the 7 ways to play an undead character presented in the Book of the Dead. Now, I may be late to the party, but with the gift of undeath, that shouldn't be a problem. Perhaps before we jump in, a comprehensive understanding of undeath is called for. We have touched on negative energy before, I believe in the video about the divine spell tradition. We discovered there that negative energy is not evil till it is used contrary to its nature, to animate the dead, a mockery of life. While the claim that this produces evil has been disputed, the hatred undead feel for the living cannot be denied. Even mindless undead set to mundane tasks will cause dangerous problems and accidents when in the presence of the living. Negative energy and the phenomenon of undeath are quite confounding. Negative energy will mimic life in so many ways. Profane hunger that is never satisfied, nor causes the undead any harm. A state of quiescence that mimics sleep but primarily during the day, and yet it would never go so far as to actually bring the flesh to life. Undeath, in a sense, is much like a spiritual form of life, dragging the flesh and bone along without ever empowering it. Perhaps most confusing of all is the language Necril. This tongue is present in the minds of all undead, and it imbues the living who speak it with the qualities of one nearing undeath. This is a language fully springing from negative energy itself. To my knowledge, there is no equivalent for positive energy. Studying this field of knowledge is difficult, not only because the hungry undead are incapable of communicating their experience, but also because the consummate undead, those with functional minds and freedom of will, so often refuse to work with the living. Luckily for us, however, copies of Geb's tome, Ale Alakma Tome, or, in common, the Book of the Dead, have reached me. Within is a treasure trove of knowledge. Playable undead have a few shared abilities. These abilities are referred to as basic undead benefits and include the language Necril, low light vision or an upgrade to dark vision, negative healing, a +1 circumstance bonus against poisons and diseases, undead hunger, and negative survival. Negative healing allows the character to heal from negative energy effects while causing them to be harmed or simply unaffected by positive energy effects. Negative survival prevents the character from being immediately destroyed at 0 HP, much like a normal undead. Instead, they gain the dying condition, much like a living creature would. Undead hunger represents the fact that undead creatures do not need to eat or drink to survive. However, undead usually have a hunger. While this hunger won't kill the character if neglected, it is an intensely powerful compulsion. Undead can't help but follow this compulsion. Now that we've established the basics, let's start with the first and only ancestry, as the rest of these will be archetypes. Skeletons. Featuring common names like Doorstop and Clatterjaw, skeletons provide their worth with dexterity and, oddly, charisma. Just don't ask them any questions about history or mathematics. As a skeleton, you will likely have trouble remembering your past, but your stronger traits, your ideals, survive. Except now you have a compulsion to collect bones, usually to replace your own when they wear out. Skeletons come in 4 heritages. Your standard, human size and shape fodder skeletons are quick on their feet. Combat skeletons, like those of gnomes and goblins, are small in size and easily move through tight spaces. Dwarfs and orcs make for exceptionally sturdy skeletons. They have higher HP and are particularly difficult to destroy. Not all skeletons are so simple, however. Monstrous humanoids make for equally monstrous skeletons, armed with the natural weapons of their living days. Skeletons also have a wide variety of awesome feats, so many in fact I will only regale you with my favorites. Collapse at first level allows you to resist the damage from a critical hit by crumpling into a pile of bones. Well armed at 5th level allows you to extend the reach of a one-handed weapon by detaching one of your arms. Bone Swarm allows you to take the form of a huge swarm of flying bones. This is one of the coolest level 17 feats I've seen so far. And since we started with skeletons, let's work our way up from the least to most refined undead. Not all zombies begin as mindless shambling corpses, but they almost always end up that way. Zombies who have retained their mind and memories are constantly fighting the decay of their body and mind alike. The only thing that holds back the fog of oblivion is the flesh of the living. When a zombie isn't feasting on a fleshy snack, they can often be found maintaining their crumbling bodies. If this maintenance isn't performed frequently, the zombie will suffer from the slowed one condition, as their joints begin to lock up and crumble apart. Zombies have a wide variety of interesting feats, including several based around providing them better action economy. My favorite, however, is the 8th level feat, Out of Hand. This feat lets you detach an arm and have it act as a slow familiar. How epic is that? Ghosts are our residential incorporeal undead. Their incorporeality is, like their flight, quite nerfed until they are later upgraded with feats, however. Ghosts are very likely to retain their personality and memories, and they're held in the living world by their connections, both to a place of great importance and their unfinished business. They frequently set aside all rationality, subtlety, and decorum when pursuing their unfinished business. A task that would be quite difficult if they couldn't interact with items. Thankfully for our floaty friends, they can spend time transmuting items into a ghostly form to allow use by incorporeal creatures such as themselves. Many ghost feats are aimed at upgrading their flight and incorporeality, but my favorite ghost feat is Rejuvenation. This 12th level feat is almost like being a Lich, causing you to reform at your bounded sight if you were ever destroyed. Maybe I should have done ghosts before zombies. Now if I do a ghouls are faster zombies transition, it'll be awkward. Oh well. Up next we have the faster, cooler zombies. Ghouls are a lot like zombies in that they crave flesh. However, rather than consuming flesh to preserve what little is left of their memories, ghouls simply follow the craving. Their hunger is so powerful, it warps the entirety of their personality and ambition to finding their next meal. Speaking of meals, a ghoul who has recently satiated their hunger gains additional ways to activate their feats for enhanced effect. Moving into the more refined undead, and keeping with the theme of feeding on the living, we have vampires. I think we all know what a vampire is, and this archetype arguably captures that vision. From the thirst for blood, intolerance to garlic, and paralyzing fear of the sun, it's all here. Their feats are all based around unlocking more of the classic vampire powers. Between their connection to nocturnal animals, sheer unstoppable charm, and nigh indestructibility, you should have no trouble making the not quite sparkly vampire of your dreams. The last two are quite literally refined as they are deliberately created. Mummification, especially that of a living patient, is a slow, painful, and gruesome process, whether done deliberately or by an extreme environment. Speaking of, each mummy is tied to the environment that mummified them, or provided the alchemical components to achieve the mummification process. Regardless, the slow desiccation makes mummies particularly tough compared to other undead, if a bit flammable. Mummy feats are focused mostly on their bound terrain or causing conditions and debuffing their enemies. My favorite of their feats, however, is Semblance of Life. This level 4 feat allows you to regain your visual appearance in life after punching a living creature. In a mixed group, this has strong disguise potential. Now this last one is probably the one most people have been excited for, the Lich. Be warned, the path to Lichdom will require absolute dedication and a complete focus on perfection. No caster can take this journey without being expert in both their magic and the artistic skill of crafting. A soul cage must be crafted and a terrible ritual must be performed. a ritual so awful it rends your soul from your body to be locked into your soul cage. This renders you immortal so long as your soul cage is kept intact. As a Lich, knowledge is your hunger, and you will always want to know more and never be satisfied by what you learn. Before we close, I have a few more notes. Healing the truly undead is difficult. Even elixirs of life have no effect, and we've been using elixirs of life to heal our Dampier friends for quite a while now. Fortunately, Oil of Unlife will do the trick, though it is a magic item, not an alchemical one, so it might be harder to get access to. What about treating wounds on your undead friends? That could be quite difficult if you're not able to do it with regularity. Well, the Stitch Flesh skill feat will allow you to use the treat wounds activity on undead characters. There have also been a few balanced choices that make playable undead a little different from the Game Master's bestiary undead. Basic undead benefits provide a +1 versus poison and disease effects rather than immunity. Of course, the considerations go the other way as well. Normally, undead creatures are destroyed at 0 HP. Instead, undead characters go to dying much like living characters would. As the GM, you're at liberty to change these, but you'll need to be careful with the player's trouncing poison or disease-based encounters, like a lot of traps, quite honestly. And you'll want to be careful about TPKs. The whole reason the dying system exists at all is to prevent TPKs. It's not a big deal if your characters go down if that doesn't mean they're actually dead. But if they're actually dead, you can't bring them up later in the fight, and you can't bring them up in the future. They're just gone. And removing that makes things a little more dangerous. Now at high levels, many undead get options for being easily resurrectable. Liches, ghosts, vampires, even the skeleton. They all have options for not dying on their destruction. So at high levels, that might not actually be too big a problem to worry about. But low levels, you'll want to be careful. But thank you all again for visiting the realm. I've been the Goat King, and as always, travel with loyal companions.